So this morning we're going to move the focus up from the feet, even though your hands, your feet, and your buttock bones are your main foundation pieces. We're going to move it up a little bit into the knees and the hips, because how we position our feet eventually affects the knees. How we sit and position our hips, the buttock bones and the pelvis, affects our hips. All right. So there's going to be a little bit more focus about sensitivity and how you ground the inner and outer heel, and then sensitivity in terms of how you set your pelvis one way or another. All right. So first off, sit as far back as you can on the blankets and extend your legs out. Now, if you have a tendency to hyperextend your knees, you may want to take your belt here and put it beneath your calf. So if you work to ground the thigh right above and right below the knee, and it hyperextends and locks out your knees, you'll have something to keep you from doing that. And then take your hands to either side of your hips and use the gentle pressure down into the hands to lift up through the side ribs, right? So here, if you can merge the whole inner aspect of your leg together by taking the outer thigh towards the inner thigh, the outer ankle towards the inner ankle, reaching through the inner heels, notice if you can feel the leg almost like a unit, like a mono leg, to coin a phrase from one of my teachers. Now, here, because I'm so focused on the legs, I find that I'm pitching forward. And as I pitch forward, I'm arcing my lower back. Now, in some cases, you might be very tight in your hamstrings. So the tendency is to tuck the tailbone under. So that's where we want to become more aware of what exactly is on the floor, right? But as I firm the thighs down, see if you can focus on activating just above and below the knee without locking out the knee, and reach through the heels. Now interlace your fingers and let your elbows be out to the side and flip the palms away from you. So the thumb pads are touching, the fingers are reaching for the opposite wrist. And as you reach more towards the opposite wrist, feel how that might integrate into reaching for the opposite elbow. Bring your hands as close as you can to your chest, bringing the arm bones back in the shoulder sockets, and then extend the arms out, plugging the elbows in, and sweep your arms up overhead. Now use the reach of your arms to create more space between the rib cage and the pelvis. If you're tight and impinged in the shoulders, you're going to have to bend the elbows and lengthen up from the armpits out through the elbows. That's just how it transfers better. Exhale, release the arms out and down. Draw the back of the knees up and take your feet wider than your hips and bring your buttock bones back to the center of the blanket. And now as I hold the back of the thighs, reach out through the elbows, I can begin to take a little bit of a move forward and back, identifying at what point does the tailbone tuck under and you collapse in the front body, right? So I'm using the action of pulling back on the thighs to bring the side ribs forward and up. I inhale, lift the sternum, and then as I exhale, I press down into the buttock bones. And I don't feel a tuck of the tailbone, but I feel a filling into the back of the pelvis. Now, Kathy, just so that I know, if you start tightening up in the front thighs here, just wave. And then I'll know that you're tightening. You're tightening? Yeah, okay. So take your feet further away. And don't press down quite so hard into the buttock bones. Does that abate it? No, it's still there. Okay. All right. Now, bring the soles of the feet together and let the knees drop to the side. Take your hands back behind you to either side of the blanket. And as you scoot forward on your blanket, let the buttock flesh roll back. Inhale, lift the sternum up, reach the inner elbows back. If you feel as though there's no support in the lower back. Take your navel towards the spine, and then you'll be more on your buttock bones. Now, all that can be kind of confusing if you're sitting upright. Yeah? Come back into your easy cross. Heels of the hands pressed down, dropping the thigh bones down in the hip socket and rotate forward. Come out any now. Take your hands out in front of you on blocks and press into the hands to draw the buttock bones back. You feel it filling into the navel. This is another way to find this. The navel goes towards the back body and the buttock bones draw down a little bit. Because if I come all the way out, air between my buttock bones so that the back of the thighs are resting on the blanket. But if I start to reach the buttock bones down, instead of being here with this sway back, I fill in and I get more extension up. Press the palms down to leverage the side ribs up. Let the thigh bones drop down, draw your abdomen in and up. Keep breathing. And then walk your hands back. And for a moment, just to put one more piece of the puzzle together, come forward, take the blankets away, and lie down onto your back. And with my hands on my abdomen, I'm going to draw the sides of the abdomen because there is this hollow here between the bottom front ribs and down towards the pubic bone. I want to either side of the raised part of the belly to drop down. And then as I press into my feet, feel how the tailbone starts to lift up. So I'm tucking the tailbone up. And if you just kept going, you'd be lifting up off of the floor like bridge pose. All right? And then exhale and lower down. And then if you relax the action of the legs, there's a little bit of a tilt of the pubic bone towards the space between the knees, and there's a little bit of that curve coming back, that natural curve in your lower back, which you want. And then press down into the feet again. Feel that scooping action. All right, now at this point, if I was standing up, I'd be tucking my tailbone. I don't want to tuck. Press into the heels, lift up and out through the thighs. So you feel the hamstrings enroll. All right, there's a stretch in the front thigh. Now, are you gripping here, Kathy? No, okay. And then exhale, lower down, let the abdomen drop down to start that process. Now, take a hold of your right shin and bring your right knee towards your armpit, right? So there's a directional quality that I can take here with the thigh bone to find out where's the most space, right? So if I take the knee towards the armpit here, right? There's one kind of positioning of the thigh bone into the hip socket. If I take my knee more center, so it's coming straight up, there's a relationship. Maybe there's no space, maybe there's more space. So I just move the knee back and forth towards the chest, away from the chest in three different positions. And then the third variation is having your knee way out to the side. So observe in those three cases where you have the most space. And it does take some time to develop a nuance of really getting a sense of the volume of your hip socket. Now, take both heels of the hands to the thighs. Take your navel down and stretch the thighs up by tractioning the thigh flesh towards the knee. And then take your left knee into those three positions again. So first I take my knee towards the chest directly, so the thigh bone is parallel. Then I'll take the knee out a little bit more. So there's a turn in that thigh bone, an outward rotation to the left thigh. And then I'm taking my knee way out to the side. to see what happens there. All right. And then bring the foot back down. We're going to move into what is a partial happy baby. It's an interesting name for a pose, but sometimes kids will stick their feet up in the air, right? So have your knees positioned towards the line of your armpits, and then take your shin bones directly up. And you can either hold the outer shin, you can hold the back of the thigh if the hip isn't open enough to get this close to the side ribs. Or if you're very flexible, you can hold the outer edges of your feet. All right. So what we want to do is draw the knees down towards the floor to either side of the rib cage. Right? If your head pops up off the floor, put a block or a blanket beneath your head. Okay? Now, let your left leg go down. All right? And begin to position the knee way out to the side, in towards the armpit, and then into the straightforward parallel nature of your thigh. And observe which one is more open for you, right? And then release the right leg down, come back up with the left leg, all right? And play around with the 3 positions, whatever that is for you. You might start wide and then come in if you have a tight hip, right? And then take both feet up again and give yourself a really nice steady pressure to open this area. And I find that with my knees wide, I get a better opening. Right. And then release the feet back down. And once again, let your navel move towards the floor and traction the thigh flesh up. Release the traction, have your arms out to the sides of your mat. Press down into the heels, lift the back of the pelvis up and out without tucking the tailbone, and then interlace your fingers and reach the shoulders towards the feet as you turn the triceps underneath. Press the forearms down, and now press the inner heels down. Maybe you feel more space on the back of the pelvis here. Exhale and lower back down. So there's a lot of little mini moves, and I'm going through a lot of them just to hopefully cover and hit a few notes for some of you. All right, now, take your feet as wide as the mat, reach your arms overhead. If it's tight on your shoulders, put a blanket beneath your forearms or blocks. And now let your knees go all the way over to the right and reach out through the top of the left thigh. As you reach out through that top thigh, the tailbone, so you want to make sure your feet are as wide as the mat. You don't want to bring the feet closer together because that changes the whole stretch entirely. See if you can take your tailbone up as if you were going into bridge pose again, just to fill in your lower back. And extend the left arm more. So you really feel perhaps a connection of the stretch from the top of your left thigh all the way up and out through the arm. And then inhale, bring the knees up and then take them over to the other side. All right? Now I'm blocked by my calf, so I'm going to shift my hips over. Right? But if I just kept, all right, this arch in my lower back, I'm not going to get the same extension. It's not going to move into the front body. It's just going to compress in the back thigh. So I have to reach out through the right thigh, take the tailbone towards the front body, and only to that point where I feel filled in the lower back, and then reach out through the right arm. And then I begin to feel this opening in the front thigh. So as far as feeling jammed in the front of your thigh bone with the grippiness, I'm thinking that things like this may begin to give you a bit more space. And then bring the knees back up, go over to your right once again, and lengthen out. Maybe you take your arms into a T this time for variation. Look over the left hand as the knees go to the right. Inhale, take the knees up. Take the knees over to the left now. Look over your right hand as you reach out through the top of the thigh. Take the tailbone towards the front body, only in as much as you take that abdomen and fill in the whole back of the pelvis. And then bring your knees back up. Rock from side to side, and then let's come to our side to transfer into child's pose. So now with all that exploration, you can begin to experiment with, if I want to get closer, ribs to thighs, maybe I need to take my knees a little wider, right? Maybe I need to bring them in a little bit more. So your shape of your bone, of the top of the thigh bone in your hip socket, can in a way be sensed. This won't be like looking at an x-ray, but you might be able to sense what's going on internally just by playing around with the subtlety of the body. And ultimately that's what yoga does, is we look to develop this sensitivity in our body.